Good afternoon, everyone. I trust you're with us. You can hear me nice and clearly and see the screen. Thanks for joining this webinar. We've just had the last few people just start joining, so just giving it a few minutes to give everyone a chance, and hopefully people have been able to connect okay and whatnot. Before we start, we'll just have a bit of a housekeeping. Really, we are offering Basis and Noroso points for this webinar today. So if you do have a Basis and Noroso number, the easiest way of registering that, there is a chat function within the webinar system. So on your screen, I think it's in the top right hand side, you'll see an icon that looks like two chat bubbles. If you just want to list your name and your ID number for whether it's Basis or Noroso in that chat, and we can pick that up afterwards and make sure you get your points. We are aware that there is some issues at the moment with claiming Basis and Noroso points with some of the new systems that have been put in place. So a number of events that we've been doing recently, we are keeping track of everyone who does attend and put their numbers down, and we'll do what we can to ensure that that gets onboarded onto the Basis system accordingly. So yeah, please do bear with us with that. It's certainly not forgotten. But anyway, as I said, thank you for joining us. This is our Northern Region Chaff Chat Live. So we're doing a series of these events for the specific regions that Cereals and Oilseeds operate across the UK within AHDB. And it's a great pleasure to welcome my colleague Millie Askew, who will be giving us the main bulk of this session. Millie's our lead analyst here at AHDB, so very much look forward to seeing her presentation. Before we get on with that, a few more bits of housekeeping. Everyone is muted as you come into the webinar, so it should be nice and quiet and easy to hear. It is being recorded and it will be made available afterwards. So those of you who signed up, or if you have to leave early, don't worry about that. It is going to be recorded, and we ensure that that'll come through to you afterwards. There is a survey at the end, I believe, as well. So again, any feedback that you would like to give would be much appreciated on how this experience has been. I will admit this is a new experience for myself running a webinar, so hopefully we are all on track. A few bits of guiding through the tools within the webinar platform for when it gets to the question and answer section. Again, in the top right, there is a little question function. So as the presentations are going on, you can put your questions in there, and then I can pick that up, and then we'll discuss those once the presentations have finished. To access that, just click the little question mark box and feel free to type away. I'll do my best to keep an eye out on that as we go through. But until then, that's about everything that we need. The agenda is as follows. So we're going to have a quick update from our regional monitor farms, actually, as part of this session. So it's a pleasure to be joined by Cameron Edwards, who is our Northwest monitor farmer, and I'll also be delivering an update on behalf of Joe Dugdale, who is our North Yorkshire monitor farmer. Joe unfortunately can't be here in person, but we did have a meeting with his monitor farm just the other day, so I've got all the latest updates from Joe that I'm happy to share. And yeah, hopefully it gives you an insight on what's going on at the monitor farms and compels you enough to maybe come and check it out if you don't already attend regularly to the monitor farm events that we have going on throughout the year. After that, we will get launched into the market update session from Millie. We will have the question and answers directly after that, and then before we close, I'll deliver a quick update on future upcoming events that are relative to the region that you may want to put in your diary or sign up to for another webinar in the coming months. So with that, I'll start with the regional monitor farm update, and I am going to start with Joe Dugdale at Craythorne Farms. So Joe is host of the North Yorkshire monitor farm. We had our meeting just this week, and if anyone can guess what crop is in that picture there that Joe's holding up, I'll give you a prize. But it's an interesting part of this monitor farm journey that we're following through at the moment. With what we're doing here, we're going to have a quick update on what yields were like this past harvest, but also how the autumn work has gone. And as part of this year's monitor farm, something that we're going to be looking at Joe and Craythorne Farms is looking at lean management as one of our key topics, alongside data management as well. So the data management side, we had our first meeting on that on Tuesday, where we were looking at the practical implementation of data for on-farm purposes. So bordering into the world of precision tech and data analysis, and then showing that farms can actually utilize what abundance of data we seem to be freely collecting at the moment as farming businesses. So really interesting monitor farm to join. If you are local to North Yorkshire, well worth checking it out, and we'd love to see you there at our next meeting. In terms of yields on the monitor farm, varied, to be honest. We know it's been a turbulent year, slightly underwhelming on a few fronts, given where things are, but certainly no real horror stories like we can unfortunately see in certain areas of the region. Just for reference, typically this farm budgets about 9 tonnes per hectare for a wheat yield, and as you can see there, just falling short of that 8.21 as in general across the board. On the far right hand side, you can see the margins that Joe has calculated. So one thing that I will mention is that our monitor farmer Joe is a user of the farm bench system and a member of a local arable business group. So it's that time of year where any farm bench users are getting their numbers together for the previous season in preparation for our upcoming discussion groups around that. So very handily Joe had this to hand. One of the key things to point out that in Joe's own words he was more disappointed with was the oilseed rape. We know there was some good crops out there this last season, but it was slightly underwhelming with where we are at Craythorne Farms. So just a smidgen over 3 tonnes. Usually the farm budget's between 3.5 to 4 tonnes in yield. And another thing that I'd like to draw your attention to is actually the crop there at the bottom. So we've got 6 to 7 crops on this farm if we include grass as well. But the one at the bottom is actually ahi flower. So this is a very novel and niche crop that the farm grows. As you can see, the margin is very attractive, primarily due to the low input costs of this product, of this commodity, sorry. And the unknown issue with it is actually it's very yield sensitive. So this has been a very good year. It achieved the targeted yield, but it is something that can vary year on year. Joe has since decided to up the acreage of this particular crop. For I think there isn't another picture of it, but winter ahi flower is what it's called. It is essentially a health food. So it's a flower that's harvested and gets processed. It is high in omega fatty acids, so primarily omega-3. So it makes its way into health food stores like your Holland and Barrett's and other shops of that ilk. So very interesting journey to follow. So if you want to learn a bit more about ahi flower, check out the North Yorkshire Monitor Farm. As you can see from there, planting this for this coming 2026 crop, roughly half of the acreage is in winter wheat, with the other primary crops being the ahi flower now and winter oilseed rape. It's usually a 1 in 6 rotation, so cultivations wise that is, so the farm tends to plough 1 in 6 for oats and barley. I'll hold that there. Like I say, unfortunately Joe couldn't join with us, but by all means look forward to welcoming you to the North Yorkshire Monitor Farm. I'll now welcome Cameron, who is on the line, and we're just going to have a quick chat about everything that's been going on at the Altka Moss Monitor Farm, which is at our northwest situated monitor farm just near Ormskirk. So Cameron, thank you for joining. Hopefully you can unmute yourself and you can hear me fine. We're just going to give everyone a little update on where things are since we last joined you at the last Monitor Farm event just before harvest, which we intertwined with an RL Open Day. For those who aren't aware of your farm, though, if you just want to give a quick background introduction to Goose Meadow farming and what's going on.
Yeah, so Goose Meadow farming, we farm around 1,000 acres. We grow cereals, so wheat, barley, oats, beans. We also grow roughly 70 acres of potatoes for McCain. And then we've also got a trialing out growing bulrushes on re-wetted peatland as well, as most of the farm is on moss.
Yeah, so there's quite a lot going on, and those that have been to the Monitor Farm will be aware of the the type of crop that you're growing on the peatland. But before we get to that, in terms of harvest itself, this 2025 crop, Cameron, how did that pan out for yourselves? Obviously, an area of the world where we usually get a lot of rain during the cropping year. It was very much an anomaly this time round. So, what insights do you have following harvest?
Yeah, so it was a pretty average harvest, really. Nothing to shout home about. We did some early irrigation of winter crops in the spring, and we think that probably paid off. The winter barley yielded around 8.2 tons a hectare, and that was a hybrid variety with all the straw baled. The winter wheat, with the irrigated stuff, that managed to bring our average up to around 8.23 tons a hectare, so much similar to your other monitor farmer.
Yeah.
But yeah, usually we expect sort of 10 ton crops on our land. The spring wheat was not brilliant. That did around 4.9 ton a hectare. And yeah, we've not got milling quality on that because the bushels aren't great. So that'll probably just be feed. We baled all the straw, but on the spring crops it was just it was practically a row of dust. And then the winter and spring oats, they were all mixed because after last year there was lots of patching up to do in the spring, so they averaged around 6 ton a hectare. And then we've just harvested our potatoes, so they're all in the shed now, and they probably did the best out of the lot. They averaged 58 tons a hectare, so we were quite pleased with the potatoes, but they were heavily irrigated all year. So
yeah, I was about to say, how did you get on with irrigation
yeah,
in the low rainfall?
yeah, we were pretty flat out. I think we irrigated all the potatoes around 4 or 5 times, and then before that we obviously did the winter wheats, well, the ones we could get at anyway. So yeah, the irrigator was certainly paid for itself, I think, this year.
Yeah, excellent. And in terms of what's gone in the ground for 2026, where are you at? Were you tempted to put more wheat in, like we've seen a lot with a lot of people, or have you kept to your planned rotation?
No, we've probably just plastered the farm in winter cereals, to be fair. We've got some cover crops, but yeah, there's about 70 hectares of spring crop to go in if we don't have to patch anything up. So yeah, pretty much everything's got either cover crop or a winter cereal on, which with the autumn we had went in really good condition.
Yeah.
And that's growing away now, but we've just got to contend with geese at the minute because they seem to be having a right good graze on it all. But with this mild weather, it is growing quite well. So
Yeah, and for those people that have been to the monitor farm will know very much about the pink-footed geese issue that you have to contend with. Unfortunately, there isn't much AHDB guidance on integrated pest management when it comes to pink-foot geese, but we could probably write something off the back of this monitor farm about it as well. So before we finish then with that update, we've mentioned the type of Cameron. It's obviously a big feature of the monitor farm and part of the journey that we follow with you. You're on lowland peat soil, and the idea of introducing this as a not necessarily a break crop, but something to supplement the arable rotation, particularly in areas of the farm where it's becoming less sustainable to grow conventional cereals, for example. So if you just had a quick minute on what's going on there.
Yeah, so on the farm we've got sort of a band through the middle of the farm, which is really deep peat, and it's just really, really wet. We can't grow. Well, you could grow cereals, but it's a very high risk, so we generally don't. So yeah, we looked at this bulrush trial, which is where you re-wet the peat and grow the bulrushes. So we started last year. We're in our first year now, and we've got around 65 to 70% establishment. So really good, to be fair, for a first year. We'll harvest next year in August. So it takes 2 years from establishment, and then after that, hopefully every year we can harvest. And the idea is we harvest the seed head, and the fluff in that seed head gets used in clothing. So there's an emerging market for that. So It's very small scale at the minute. The trial site's around 7 hectares. So yeah, we like to give updates on that in all our monitor farm meetings as well. So
excellent.
we can keep up to date.
Absolutely, and we'll be resuming at the monitor farm on the 11th of December next month. So a date for the diary, and we'll cover that before the end, along with everything else. But thank you, Cameron, for that. I appreciate it. It's a short update with the format that we're trying to do here. So we'll move on to our main session. So Millie, it's a pleasure to have you on for this webinar, giving us our update. So without further ado, I'll hand over to yourself. And yeah, if there's any questions as Millie's going through everyone, feel free to put it in the questions box. I can keep an eye on it, and then we'll visit that at the end once we've completed.
Thanks very much, Craig. Thank you. So just a bit of background. I'm Millie Askew, the lead analyst for Cereals and Oilseeds here at AHDB. And today I am going to give you a bit of an update on sort of what's happened for Harvest 2025. So what have we got in sheds, what have we got available, what's demand looking like, then looking a bit more actually regionally what happened for Harvest. And then we'll be looking as well at regional pricing, and then going on to what's in store for 2026, as we recently, or very recently this morning, have released the results of our early bird planting intention survey. So it gives us a bit of a first insight of what's in the ground or what's planning to be in the ground for 2026. And then we'll have a look at those market drivers at the moment, which is going on not just domestically, but actually what's going on globally, which is driving our domestic markets. So if we go to the next slide, please, Craig. So I say, let's cast our minds back to this time last year, or autumn 2024, and the planting window. By no means did we have a horrific planting window like we did in 2023. However, there were some challenges, and there was some excessive moisture, not necessarily up north where you are, but actually on sort of from the East Midlands down south. So there was somewhat of that mixed picture in terms of planting. And then again, the weather didn't really ease. I know people did manage to get crops in November, etc., but actually we then went into that extreme situation of extreme dry and hot conditions throughout the spring and the summer. And as you can see from these maps here on the screen, just a bit of an overview, it sort of really highlights the lack of rainfall and the sheer almost situation that we found ourselves in. All the way from north to south of the country in terms of the lack of soil moisture due to those extreme weather conditions. So what impact that had on the crop? So if you go on to the next slide, Craig, please. Here's just again, looking on a map, this is the sort of the regional breakdown of production changes from 24 to 25. And as you can see, there is a bit of a mixed bag. So we did see an increased area of wheat being planted in England and in Scotland for Harvest 25, but yields were very, very mixed. And again, that has something to do with the correlation of the typical amount of rainfall and obviously those extreme conditions. So in terms of the northeast, it somewhat fared quite well on the production side. We did see those large increases, especially in the northeast and Yorkshire in area, and we did see particularly good yields expected, and we have seen good yields in the northeast. So we can see actually in the northeast we have got wheat production up by 35%, down into Yorkshire and Humber we've got it up 16%, and then down further bordering onto sort of Lincolnshire Humber side there we've got it down to 9%. Oh, up 9%, sorry. So we have got that sort of stronger increase in wheat production. We did see better yields, especially in the northeast side. Again, in the northwest, production didn't fare badly on the wheat side. It's actually as we go further south down the country. For barley, slightly different picture. You can see that the map's blue, which means the majority of it's below the changes, minus changes, except in Scotland. Scotland did have a bigger barley crop this year, however, a lot poorer quality crop this year. Again, going down the country, we saw, or as a nation as a whole, we saw a reduction in spring and winter barley plantings, and we've also seen that yield impact as well in particular areas in the country, again due to those adverse conditions, especially impacting the spring crop. With the spring area being lower too, we have seen that impact this year. So if we move on to the next slide, Craig, we can see here, this is a bit of a, I say an overview, so we sort of looked at the changes regionally, but actually what does it stack up domestically? So what is UK production looking like? So we don't actually have a UK official production figure from DEFRA yet, because they don't release one until halfway through the season. But we do have the provisional England and Scotland, and we've made an estimate for Northern Ireland and Wales to come up with these provisional production figures for the UK for 2025. So in a nutshell, despite those area increases, like I say, going back to the poor planting conditions of 2023, and then we have better planting conditions generally in 2024, we did see that area increase for wheat. With the really mixed bag of yields nationally, we're only seeing that slight uptick in wheat production. So currently the 2025 wheat crop is pegged at around 11.8 million tonnes. Again, for barley, we saw a reduced planted area as well as really mixed yields. So again, we're lower on that one there at 6.44. And again, from the oats side, oats was, again, we've been hearing lots of reports about oats. It's very hit and miss, and touching there on the comment made earlier about dust. So we've been hearing that some people have yielded like this dust in the combine versus actually really good amount. So we did see an area increase in oats for harvest 25, but due to that very, very mixed bag and some very poor yields, it's relatively stand on the year. I think one of the saving graces, or is little sung hero really, of oilseed rape, and there's been a lot, obviously, I say talked about oilseed rape, but a lot of obviously area changes and area reductions over the last few years due to various reasons. But the unsung hero for harvest 2025 was rape. Yes, we did have a smaller area planted, but we did see as a whole nationally significantly better yields. So we did see that slight increase in oilseed rape production at harvest 2025. I think, again, we'll touch a bit more on localised supply and demand in a moment, but just sort of general consensus is we've gone into this marketing year with, so 2025-26, with lower wheat stocks. We've gone in with, a slightly higher wheat crop. We've gone in with demand is expected to be, generally for human industrial demand is expected to be a lot lower, and animal feed there is some positivity there, but so despite sort of that general decline in demand, the decline in production somewhat outweighs that, as well as the decline in imports that we're expecting. So we are expecting a tighter wheat and barley balance sheet this year. Just, I say, sort of touching on the demand side. So from a human industrial point of view, bioethanol demand is expected to be a lot lower, given that the Virgo has now ceased production. Ensus broke for their usual maintenance break in September and are yet to get back up and running. I think that's one of the major ones really for me, because given that both plants combined has the capacity to use together, 1 million tonnes of wheat each. As that's, like I say, very heavily caveated with the capacity. That's not what is used every year. We have lost that demand centre, and again, that is driven by the US-UK trade deal, with the margins and been incredibly low and extremely difficult operating conditions for the bioethanol plants. So for this marketing year, so up until the middle of next year, we're currently forecasting in the balance sheets no bioethanol usage of either wheat or maize. Again, flour production is relatively subdued. It's on that very long-term downward trend. So there's nothing really too exciting going on that angle. And then again, somewhat of a depressing state for the brewing, malting and distilling sector, where malting demand continues to be down on the year, and we're expecting it to continue again at least to the end of this season. Again, a combination of factors driving that. You've got the premiumisation, where you've got people buying better products but fewer of it in terms of alcohol. You have fewer younger people, the trend of fewer younger people drinking alcohol. And then you've also got the cost of living crisis obviously being the major one, so fewer people going out to eat and drink, which is having that impact on brewing, malting and distilling demand. I did touch on just a moment ago about imports, and we're expecting them to be lower. I think Well, last year we had record high wheat import levels for the season, and again we had record or near record highs of maize imports for the season. From a maize point of view, maize was pricing right in around, if we cast our minds way back, sort of end of spring, early summer 2024, maize was pricing favourably compared with other global cereals and other cereal prices. So you had maize sort of coming down here, but you had wheat slightly coming up. So those who use maize, so animal feed producers up in the north, in Northern Ireland, as well as the bioethanol guys, they saw the opportunity and bought quite a bit forward. So we did see maize come in quite literally and by the boatload. And again, with wheat, with that very poor harvest for 2025 and the real mixed quality, 2024, sorry, and that very mixed quality, we did see the demand there for the higher quality wheats coming in. So we saw imports of those high spec, high protein products from the likes of Canada and Germany coming in a lot larger volumes. And again, we've carried quite a bit of that over into this season. So in terms of import requirements, this season, we're not necessarily expecting them to come in such volumes because we do have that quality in the domestic crop for harvest 2025. We do have feed availability with the somewhat poorer barley crop, as well as slightly more, again, larger feed pool, given the proportion of bread varieties planted versus feed varieties planted for this harvest. But we could be looking at, we've currently got in the balance sheet forecast wheat imports at about 2.2 million tonnes, with, again, back to the normal-ish levels of milling quality, but actually with obviously animal feed requirements up into different areas, including into Northern Ireland. And again, from an animal feed point of view, we are expecting actually animal feed to remain quite buoyant this season. Yes, dairy prices have very much come down. We've got cattle prices coming down as well. So the actual market isn't looking as positive as it was. But at the moment, it still is expected that the dairy price, farm growers will still be feeding their dairy cattle up until at least probably springtime next year. And again, obviously depending on spring, but there isn't expected to have a negative impact on dairy feed. And again, with cattle, once you started feeding cattle, and obviously with the forage quality and availability not there this year, they will be still feeding again to get their price at the end, obviously to get up weight. But we have seen, obviously, like I say, with the forage there is aiding that usage of cereals. It is also important to point out, and it's not a positive, obviously, from a cereal grower point of view, but with cereal prices relatively low at the moment, it is also incentivizing growers to still feed more despite prices of cattle and dairy coming down. So it is an interesting one to follow. And again, poultry demand, especially from that broiler side, is expected to pick up this year due to improved prospects. Obviously, caveating that with the recent outbreak of bird flu, or the more severe outbreak of bird flu. So we'll see if and what impact that has going through the season on demand. So if that's sort of a national overview, very quick national overview. And now if we just move on to the next slide, we can just look at a bit more of a regional breakdown and look here at, obviously, I say the map here is just singled out very much, just I say part of the north, not the whole north, but we can look at the 2025 yields for the major crops, and we can see that in comparison to the 5-year average. So obviously I was sort of going on earlier about how we've seen that really good improvement in yields on the year, but actually on a 5-year comparison, there isn't really that. We are still struggling somewhat in some areas, or we are still down on that typical 5-year average, and we saw that again throughout the season. 2024 obviously was quite a poor year. 2025 was a very mixed year, but actually if you look at the 5-year average, we are seeing yields still down for some crops. So if we just look at the map here, or just sort of the areas, you can see actually the UK in terms of wheat of yields, we've got the UK average wheat yield for this year is down 12% on the 5-year average, but actually we're probably faring a bit better in these regions in terms of the quantity of reduction on the 5-year average, so we're scoring slightly higher than those counties and regions in the south. And similarly for winter barley, further north, but actually on the northwest and obviously into Yorkshire and Humber, we've seen that reduction there. And again, you can see obviously for yourself, spring barley did not yield very well in Yorkshire and up into the northeast there, in comparison with the 5-year average, and again with oats. But the saving grace again is actually oilseed rape. I know again it still was quite mixed, but we did generally see quite a positive result for oilseed rape up here in the north. So if we can move on to the next slide, Craig, that'd be great. So I did obviously just mention there, sort of when you've just seen this chart from a UK point of view, but actually looking at it from a regional point of view, sort of we can see here that actually we have seen a nice increase in wheat production, a slight decrease in the barley production. Again, oats relatively stand on, a slight increase in the oilseed rape production. I touched on obviously the demand areas, or the sort of demand factors. Bioethanol, as I said, was one of the major things for me at the moment, was the loss of those demand centres at the moment, very much hoovering up excess, and also is a main demand centre for some from southern Scotland all the way up to Lincolnshire, all the way down to Lincolnshire, sorry. So we have lost that demand centre for domestic wheat. We have seen larger Scottish crops, and we'll look actually in a moment in sort of spot price premiums over futures, and you can see actually what impacts that's had on the Scottish premium, and it's very interesting. I would obviously caveat that with actually we have had, with obviously barley being the major crop in Scotland, there has been a lot of quality issues in Scotland with very high nitrogen and very high screening levels. So we have seen that. So there's a larger feed pool, I would suggest, in Scotland this year. And again, that increased animal feed demand, I did obviously mention that a moment ago, but we are still seeing that strong demand from the ruminant side, which is positive. Again, there is a question mark around imports. While we're not expecting imports of wheat per se to be as high as it was last year, maize globally at the moment is expected, and we'll go on to that a little bit later, but maize is expected, we're expected to have bumper crops this year. So could we see, again, maize pricing favourably to come in and displace some of that domestic product? Who knows at the moment. So that's one we're watching quite vigilantly. But I think with ENSAs currently not operating, and with the abundancy of domestic feed grains this season, or the relative abundancy, I think we will probably see that slight reduction in maize imports unless prices do come significantly lower and it makes more sense to import than feed domestic. So that's going to be one to watch. Can we move on to the next slide, please, Craig? So again, I mentioned earlier, obviously, about from a feed point of view, we are seeing sort of that lower forage availability and quality, and that can just be, again, portrayed here in this. There isn't really a huge national price series for straw and hay, but so the equivalent from here is looking at the big square baled wheat straw price and the big bale hay price. And obviously, if you do have supplies of straw, it is somewhat of a positive at the moment. Well, not if you have livestock, but if you have straw available to sell, then it is somewhat of a positive. And again, if you have hay to sell, because again, the prices have somewhat skyrocketed here, and you can see the prices here looking at East Yorkshire and the North East. Again, incentivising some livestock producers to be feeding more cereals at the expense, or to mix in with their forage that they do have. So that is one of the, I say, saving grace at the moment. In terms of that demand centre, we do have that relatively strong demand, and we are seeing cereals being included in animal feed rations at a stronger rate this season in comparison to last. While you can't really displace too many proteins with cereals, there is that slight wiggle room, and we are seeing that increase in cereal usage in animal feed. So if you move on to the next slide, Craig. So you can see here we've got, you can see here. So on last week we released the results of our cereal quality survey. So this is a survey of merchants and asking for data from their samples, and it is somewhat positive picture for this 2025 crop. As I've said, the quality is here. From a wheat perspective, the quality is much better this year. We're seeing really much higher proteins, and a better crop, and a very functional crop has been described by the millers. So in terms of proportions meeting spec, so you'll see here on the graph on the left, or the sort of figures on the left hand side here, this is the proportion or the results from the group 1 samples and the average group 1 samples, so the top spec milling variety. So for a bit of context, this year just shy of 50% of the top spec samples actually met the requirement for group 1 milling, which is the 13% protein, the 76 kilogram per hectolitre specific weight, and the Hagberg falling number of 250 seconds or greater. So while, yes, the Hagberg falling number generally out of all the samples has slightly come down, actually the amount of samples meeting all of that criteria has gone up. It's more than doubled from the 20% that meet that criteria or met that criteria in 2024, so which is a positive for the domestic crop. And then, well, we'll look at, on the right hand side, you can have a look at the I said premiums. So premiums, as we all know, have been eroding now for about a year. Milling wheat premium over futures for a variety of factors. Last year we had that tighter milling wheat crop, and we didn't have that there, which you would think, oh well, the premium will keep climbing. However, there was ample supply on the domestic, on the global market. We imported it, it squashed that premium, and you can see again almost the other way around. Now we've got a decent crop this year, so the premium is remaining lower for milling over feed wheat, and again the same applies to the malting premium as well this year, despite us having that smaller quality malting crop, and we'll go on to the barley results in a minute. We are still seeing premiums being squashed by the lack of demand from the brewing, malting and distilling sectors. If you move on to the next slide, Craig, please. And here we go, we've got the barley results, zero quality survey. So again, really quite high nitrogen levels for winter barley and spring barley. Good specific weights for winter barley, but high and good screenings. But for spring, again, it's pretty much negative, well, negative, but it's lower, worse results than in 2024. We have the higher nitrogen, the lower specific weights, and the higher screening levels. So it's yeah, not necessarily, I say, the best picture from a barley point of view quality wise, but like I say, we don't have necessarily that huge domestic demand this season for good quality. I think when I've been speaking with the maltsters and the distillers, there will be enough domestic product to meet the demand that we do have. If you move on to the next slide, Craig. So very conscious of time, so I'm going to, I say, rattle through what there is, but we have here is that sort of, I say, the long-awaited or the much anticipated results of the, or provisional results of the 2026 early bird survey of planting intentions. So the results have come in. I was somewhat, I don't know, surprised by the results, and the fact this is for the UK. We don't have the regional breakdown until December time, when DEFRA release their actual data for 2025, and then we can do the raisings of that. But wheat's actually up by only 1% on the year, and sort of looking at the breakdown there, actually there's the increase in winter wheat area has been somewhat squashed by a decrease in spring wheat area. And you can see again, winter barley is down slightly there. And again, spring barley down a lot more, and then we've again got oats down on the year, but oilseed rape probably unsurprisingly is higher. We have had those preferable winter planting conditions. Obviously, margins for oilseed rape at the moment are looking a lot more favourable than other crops and other cereal crops, especially. So we are seeing, it may not come as a surprise really, that we have seen that increase, and it does look like a large increase of 30%, but actually if you compare it to the 10-year average and even compare it to 2 years ago, the figure for the oilseed rape area isn't that huge. It's just we have seen such significant drops as we have seen going forward. We have had those favourable winter planting conditions, as you can see on the map on the right hand side there, just basically quite rather average weather we have had nationally. So it'll be interesting to see what the weather goes on like, and actually whether these do come to fruition when it comes to actually next summer. So if we move on to the next slide, please, Craig. So these are, I say, the Northeast ex-farm feed wheat prices and average. And again, it's just highlighting that despite the quite mixed harvest and despite lower yields in some areas, and we're not seeing prices compensate for that, and we're not seeing prices come up. And again, they are lower than the previous season. So you've got feed wheat and feed barley here. But I think one thing that you can see is that the discount there, wheat has been somewhat more stable. Barley has been steadily, well, it went down, then came back, it's coming back down again. The discount of feed barley to feed wheat is getting larger. It's likely we are expecting more barley to be in the feed pool this year and take some of that demand away from wheat as such. So again, if you go on to, so we've talked a lot about domestic, but just look at, say, the global drivers and what's going on globally. Again, globally, the picture isn't still looking that, I say, chipper. Wheat prices are lower than this time last year, with bigger falls for higher protein prices. And you can see here, obviously, you've got the maize is acting at the bottom there as the floor of the market, and you've got the other prices there. Plus, there we are lower globally. Maize prices have ticked up there, but I think there is again a question mark how long that will continue given the size of the crop we are expecting. If you go on to the next slide, please, Craig. So what to watch out for globally, the global supply and demand sort of situation at the moment. As I mentioned, we are expecting a substantial rise in maize production this year, especially from South America as well as the US. Maize production is meant to be up by 41 million tonnes this year, which is significant. So we are expecting a huge maize crop from the US as well as South America. So we'll see how that goes. South American crop, obviously, Southern Hemisphere harvest and timings, there is still a long way to go. So a lot could happen. But at the moment, it is looking like the market is expecting a large maize crop there. Again, we have seen this recovery, and we are expected to continue to see this recovery in wheat production. So a record wheat production in 2025 for the EU, and again this year favourable weather across Europe is allowing for plantings. And we've got lastly really the sort of, I say, the other somewhat bearish factor on the market at the moment, or looking at prices, is barley is struggling for demand. Not just domestically, malting demand is down, it is somewhat globally. So you can see here you've got the global increase in production of cereals up by over 4%, but we've only got demand up by 2%, and that is somewhat outweighing there that sort of the demand, or the drop in, the less increase in demand is actually outweighing that rise in production. So we are seeing that's what is weighing on markets at the moment. But I say there are some factors to look out for. So if you go on to the next slide, please, Craig. I think these are the key factors, and I think it's really important to highlight at this point that everything is cyclical in markets. We have lived through domestically here, 5 seasons, 5 years worth of unprecedented times. And it has been a serious struggle, whether it's been politics, geopolitics globally, whether it has been weather, pandemics, etc., you name it, we have been hit by it, and it has taken its toll on domestic growers. And again, obviously, margins are very, very tight at the moment. Prices are low, arguably, and you wouldn't believe this, at the moment we are still pricing domestically for imports. If you look at our prices compared with Paris, which is very ironic given the price feels quite low over here, but the way that the currency works as well, we are still pricing as if we are slightly above everywhere else, which again, it definitely does not feel that way. But I think there are some, I say, somewhat factors. We are seeing obviously there's contrasting demand trends. So we're seeing that lower, like I said, that no demand, barley demand from the brewing, malting and distilling globally, but actually we are seeing a rise in animal feed, and we have seen that sort of surgence back in Asia and China. There's really big, large, important markets there from a cereal and oilseed point of view. So we are seeing that uptick. Again, question mark around Black Sea production. I still am questioning the size of the 2025 Russian crop. I don't know be interesting to see actually as the season progresses how much they do have to export, but it's very much one to watch, given they've had nearly 2 years worth of drought and extreme dry conditions. Actually, is their crop 5 million tonnes up on the previous year or not? And it'd be a really interesting one to see, because we've seen over the last week Black Sea sort of kick a bit of European wheat out and then won over tenders. But how long will that continue? It's one to watch. Again, the geopolitical situation is forever changing. We've seen the China and US, I say, become slightly more friendly over the last week, and looking like US soybeans may start to be exported back to China again, which is great from a demand point of view and great from market dynamics point of view. But I think, like I say, the South American maize crop is definitely one to watch. We are expecting record levels, but we've got a La Nina forecast for that region, and what impact will that have on the crop? Is it going to be worse than initially expected? And again, 2026 winter crops in the Northern Hemisphere, we have seen obviously relatively decent planting conditions, more especially here in Europe. But it's just one to watch, watching on US whether we do have, or whether they do have weather issues going forward. And again, over here in Europe as well, are they going to have issues going forward? So there is some hope. I think it's the highlighting, like I say, markets are very much cyclical. At the moment, it's very much, and again, sort of going back to Craig's first, I say, his him sharing the slides from his Monte Farm this week, is looking actually at your margins, looking at your break-even point, how to improve the margins, and also what diversification and what different areas and crops can you grow. I will quickly very much go through oilseed, just what's driving the oilseed market at the moment, because as I say, margins for oilseed rape are actually looking slightly more favourable than cereals. What's sort of weighing and what's pulling up markets? So actually, what's sort of the bearish factor at the moment for oilseed rape is the rebound in the 2025 EU crop, as well as the potential for a further rise in Europe again for 2026. That optimism over South America isn't just for maize, it's also for soya. It's highly apologised if you can hear barking in the background. I don't think Craig can you hear that, Craig?
Yeah, just a bit.
Give me a moment. There we go, the post
calm down, I'm sure. So we've got optimism over the South American soybean crops as well. And again, Australia expected strong canola, which is also rape yields this year. So that is somewhat weighing on the market. However, the positives somewhat are the fact that we've got that smaller EU and Ukrainian 2025 sunflower crop, which again, sunflower import of the oilseed complex and what's supporting it. You've got stronger global biodiesel demand. US, there are rumours that sort of their version of E10 expected to have more bioethanol included in fuels. And again, that easing of US-China tensions, again, it looks like it is easing. Could we see that those markets open back up, and could we see that demand centre, open back up, and the sort of the supply and demand dynamic balance itself back out again? And could that add some more support to the oilseed rape market? So I think I say that's very much all from me. I'm sorry for rattling on, but I hope that was, I say, somewhat useful. And if anyone's got any questions, please do put them in the questions box. Oh, thank you very much for that, Millie. An awful lot to unpack there. Your commentary is very much appreciated, and there's obviously a lot of work gone into the data that you've been talking through there. And yeah, fascinating to see the regional breakdown, even to almost a county level as such within where we are. Yeah, there's a lot that I could take away from that personally. We have had some questions though, and by all means, if anyone else has questions, please do drop them in. I've been made aware that there's maybe an issue with the chat box, but if you use the question mark one, things seem to be getting through. And the first question that we had, Millie, was actually from Nick. Good to have you join us, Nick. And it was regarding wheat production numbers. So Nick's question was, what is the 2025 wheat production excluding 2024 carryover? How much was imported, and does that figure include that revision of 1MT, which was published a short while ago? No,
so the 11.8 million tonnes is that's production. That's not looking at carryovers. That's not looking at the balance supply and demand. So we carried into this season 2 million tonnes of wheat. Now, I'm doing that in inverted commas, so I don't know whether, Nick, you're commenting about the final balance sheet that was released a few months ago. And please, I know you can't speak, but if I'm rambling on about the wrong thing, please do put it in the chat. But in May, we published an ending stocks figure of 3 million tonnes. And in at the final balance sheet, when we've got all the actual data in, it actually was 2 million tonnes. Now, I just would like to put some caveats around that. Up until September, they are all estimates and forecasts based off the best knowledge, and you've got closing stocks will be almost that balancing factor. Once you've worked out all your supply and demand, that is how much will be left. And again, obviously, trade's factored into that. When you have to use the actual data, I'm talking about the official DEFRA statistics, the usage statistics, as well as the HMRC trade data, you have to use that information. And while you would want all data to be accurate and 100%, majority is based off surveys. So a survey is not a census, it's never going to be 100% correct. There are those error or sort of room for error and the margins there. My thing is there are areas or more, some surveys that have larger margins of error than others. So you would notice in the closing or the end of season balance sheet, the stocks came out at 2 million tonnes. There is a residual, which is an unallocated amount of about just shy of 600,000 tonnes. Now, where does that sit? Now, in my opinion, I think a lot of that sits with the production figure from DEFRA and the on-farm stock survey figure, given the confidence intervals for both, and also feedback talking with industry and trade. So I actually think the carrying stock figure, while on paper we have to use that 2 million tonnes, I think the carrying stock figure is going to be larger, is actually larger than 2 million tonnes. I think we have got more, we had more on farm carried over, and I think we had somewhat more imported product carried over as well than was initially stated. So we have got at the moment that we have got that 11.8 million tonnes actual production for 2025 with a 2 million tonne carryover and a 2.2 million tonne import figure forecast. So that's available supplies for the 2025 wheat balance sheet.
Thank you, Millie. Yeah, you touched upon something though. There was quite a few questions around that at the time. Just on that note, obviously you work across the UK delivering these presentations. Are there any other frequently asked questions that you're finding that are coming across your desk at the moment with stuff that's going on that might be worth sharing if people have stuff in the back of their mind but haven't quite put it down to ask?
I say not so much at the moment. I think it's an interesting one with obviously the results of production and output. And if you look at the DEFRA, I don't know whether anyone's had a chance to look at the DEFRA regional breakdowns, but there are some surprises in some of the regions. But generally as a whole, the figure I would have put possibly, I think before I saw this data, I would have put production at nearer 12 million tonnes for wheat this season, so slightly higher. But again, it's an interesting one to unpack the regional. And again, the other questions or other comments have been around actually the size of the carrying stocks this year, that people believe they are higher than what is currently stated.
Yeah, I get your point about that on what you see on the ground and the feel that you have, but then once data comes in, actually what that means, and it's something we see out in the field, especially with like the early bird survey, you know, the oilseed rate figure there. I was really interested to see. I've had quite a few people ask me whether they feel that area acreage is growing, and from what I'd seen on the ground, there was completely expecting it to have gone up, but it never felt like people that were reintroducing oilseed rape. It felt more like those that were already growing it were maybe just putting a bit more area in because they were getting the confidence back. We've had a low pressure flea beetle year, for example, so it was always a difficult one that I've been, dare I say, fobbing people off until we have some data through to understand it. So yeah, that was really interesting to see.
I was going to say, I'll be interested to see what the actual, when we've got the final DEFRA figure for harvest 2025, ironically halfway through the season when the majority of the crops are sold, but that is something we are very much pressuring DEFRA on to try and improve their data provisions, but that's a different story for a different time. But we'll be very interested to look at the regional breakdowns and look at the where the increases specifically for oilseed rape are coming from, or whether it's across the board, or whether there are particular pockets across the country where we are seeing that rise.
Yeah, interesting. We've had another question actually from Nick Millie around the viability of growing cereals in Yorkshire after he's been consulting some AI for assistance. Now, obviously, a very dangerous tool it is AI. I guess that's a question around viability and profitability going forward. There's a lot of noise in the industry around that at the moment, and yeah, any moment now we're due to see Baroness Minette Batter's report into farm profitability land as well. So from a economics and analysis side, Millie, whether there's any response to Nick there around viability, particularly within cereal cropping for the Yorkshire region.
I think it's a terribly complex question, but I think it does come back to that. I said my initial point, and I thought, as I said, I shout about it quite a bit in terms of understanding margins, because to me there's no point of chasing a price if you don't understand your break-even point to get to that price. And that's obviously not saying that people don't, but it's actually understanding that. So how much do you need to sell a ton of wheat for to get to your break-even point, and how much can you not sell it for, and how could you actually improve that break-even point? And it's looking at that very much onto the granular level, because the market is the way it is at the moment, and it feels somewhat desensitized since the war in Ukraine. And things that should have made the market sort of G up a bit haven't done necessarily as much as it would have done. I think we are in a situation where it's not each for their own, but it's understanding your business and understanding and doing the longer term planning and the risk management side there, and actually understanding what markets you're growing for as well, and what markets you could be growing for. And also there's other areas of somewhat, I say, diversification, which we've seen two other monitor farmers do, not necessarily but using their land to produce not necessarily the typical crops that you would see in a rotation 5-6 years ago as such. That's not that I'm saying everyone can do that, but it's looking at those other avenues.
Yeah, and certainly within the Yorkshire region and what we see, yes, we know there's some really poor performances this season, primarily down to the climate and weather systems that we had. But from what we've seen out in the field, you can be on one farm and then less than a 10-minute drive away, a neighbour has a completely contrasting story, whether it's yield or what have you, and it's very, very difficult to quantify.
It's very much this year, Craig, and I feel very much, and I'm not just saying soil, there's regional differences with weather and soil type. It's not regional. It's not even, it's parish differences this year. It has been very much, and joking apart, but you can have two farms bordering, and actually they could have separate results on their furthest fields away to what actually each other have, because it has been such a challenging year. And we've seen when we have had rain, it's been very much localized, but very, very specifically localized as well. And again, the impact of soil types, and if you did suffer from sort of the hot weather and impacting plantings, sort of in the autumn, that had again a bit more with this late planted crops, the damage done to those as such.
Absolutely, and that's discussion that I'm certainly looking forward to seeing when we get round to our arable business groups, where localized farm groups are getting together, and we're seeing some good evidence and statistics of what's actually been going on farm. Appreciate trying to put national figures into context can sometimes be difficult, but yeah, we'll wait and see as to what those discussions bring, because ultimately I'm sure there'll be perfect examples of that in the room, where we have some poor scenarios just down the road, and then on the other side of the hedge there's some other outputs. So which Nick, I know, is very much a part of that, so thoroughly look forward to contribution through that, and anyone else that wants to get involved with the facilities like Farm Bench, which get provided free of charge through AHDB. Do reach out to your local Farm Bench team and check it out. It's a worthwhile resource, like I say, especially as this theme of understanding on-farm profitability is being echoed louder and louder.
It's very much, I would plug Farm Bench, like, again, just because you learn so much from the ABG. Sorry, Craig, I'll say that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm just glad to know I'm not the only person that's a fan of that. And we're about done with the formal question time that we had allocated. I haven't seen any more burning ones come through just yet, but by all means, if anyone does have follow-up questions, do get in touch with us. I'm aware with the basis and the RSO thing that the chat isn't necessarily working. Feel free to put it in in the questions section, because that does seem to be working. Failing that, I'm happy for you to drop me an email with your details on, and I can ensure that you don't miss out on any points if you wish to claim them. Before we do wrap up, I just want to take a few minutes to highlight what else is going on within the region that is available to you as AHDB levy payers. First up, you'll start to see on social media a lot of advertising around our upcoming series of Cereals and Oilseeds roadshows. So we've got a range of different topics where we're trying to cover as much ground as possible to bring an event close to nearly everyone within the region. We've got 3 main roadshows this year. Last year we were looking at time management and natural capital as themes. This year we have got farm resistance, resilient farm roadshow, and the smart nutrition roadshow. First up is the resistance roadshow. So as you can see there on the little movie poster, we've got a stacked bill with this one, featuring a range of experts across the world of IPM, whether it's weeds, pests and diseases, contributions from not only AHDB but Rothamsted Research, ADAS, NAB, Harper Adams University, Voluntary Initiative and DEFRA. So a real coming together. If this was a movie, I think this is our Avengers with everyone involved. So as you can see there, plenty of dates. When it comes to the North region, we've got one in Yorkshire at the Driffield Showground, and then also further north in Northumberland, we do have Morpeth with that particular event. After that, we've got the Resilient Farm Roadshow featuring Stephen Briggs as a keynote speaker, but Stephen will be joined by regional farmers as well, and that'll be talking all around on-farm resilience. So that can be everything from environmental resilience to financial resilience of what we've seen in the industry over the last season or so. So very much worthwhile going to see Stephen with there. That's brought to you in association with Agricology as well. They're the main partner for organising that event. And then lastly, we've got our Smart Nutrition Roadshow in partnership with Land Crop Laboratories. We're going to be joined by keynote speaker John Telfer, and then also Hannah Shirt from Land Crop Laboratories, talking all things smart nutrition. We have 2 dates for that here in the north. So in North Yorkshire, we'll be at Malton on the 24th of February, and then over in Cumbria and Penrith on the 25th of February, where we will also be teaming up with Eco Prospects, who will be contributing to that event as well, with some additional speakers and insights specific to the Northwest region. So make a note of those. They will be apparent on a lot of the email communications that you get going forward. So keep an eye on that, as well as all the other events going on. Other things we've got coming up, this one's quite hot off the press, something that I'm looking to get off the ground for those oilseed rape growers, and it's returning with the AHDB and United Oilseeds joint conference. Last February, it was held down in Northampton, and this year we're wanting to bring that to the north. So we'll be having a conference lineup filled with expert speakers from AHDB and United Oilseeds, as well as external partner organisations. All being well, we'll be hosting that at the LNER Community Stadium in York in early February. Keep your eyes peeled for more details on that as they emerge, and very much look forward to that one in particular. And then, as we discussed with Cameron, our monitor farmer at Olka Moss, we've got an upcoming monitor farm event just this side of Christmas on the 11th of December, where we will be exploring precision farming. So if you were interested in anything Cameron had to say at the start there, particularly around some of the work he's been doing with the Typha field, be sure to check that one out. It's really a fascinating journey to follow. So that's the 11th of December. Following on from that, we have another webinar in the form of our Strategic Cereal Farm North Results webinar. So those of you who are aware of the Strategic Farm North, hosted by David Blacker near York, we have a results webinar where Dave and the rest of the team that are working on that particular project are going to be delivering outputs. So expect to hear across the different themes that Dave is exploring, everything from field drainage to on-farm nutrition. It's a really great insight as to where that's up to now into year 3/4 of the strategic farm journey since that began. And then we also have the AHDB Agronomy Conference, which is returning again this year. Usually happens early December. This time it is returning as an in-person event as well as online. So feel free to check that one out as well. If you can join in person, excellent. As you can see, it is hosted down in the Midlands though, so maybe a little far to travel for some people, but you're aware of it nonetheless. Other things that are going on, I trust most people do receive timely emails advertising all the different things that we've got going on. We're also starting to push out various bits of digital content as well. So this is just a friendly reminder around use of the AHDB Preference Centre. Ensure that you're getting all of the information and details that you want to receive, and you can filter that to your heart's content. Recently, we've been posting out the new winter edition of the Arable Focus magazine, which is available in digital format as well as a hard copy if you happen to see me at an event going forward. Make sure to check that out. Really nice document that really follows a lot of the key topics that AHDB Cereals and Oilseeds have been invested in over the last 6 to 12 months or so. So really great insights can be found in that publication. And then I'll finish on this. We do have a new AHDB podcast which launched just this week. The first episode aired yesterday, I believe. So that's the Ag Show podcast. You can find the Ag Show on any podcast streaming service that you use. So whether you're a Spotify or an Amazon or Apple person, wherever, check that out. Brand new type of format. Love to know what people think. It'll be covering all sectors as well, so it's not just exclusive to cereals and oilseeds. So if you're a mixed farmer as well, there's content for everyone. So please do check that out and let us know what you think. With that, I will draw this event to a close. I can see lots of people putting in the points, so thank you very much. We made a note of that, and as I say, if anyone just wants to follow up with me on an email, if you'd rather, please do so. Be more than happy to arrange that for you. So until our next event, I look forward to catching you all in the future. Wish you all a wonderful winter period if I don't speak, and we'll see you down the road. Thank you very much, everyone. Cheers.